half of this, I don't see too many empty chairs. I think I only have like maybe 2, 3, 4 tops. And I know 2 of them very well. They've been to every class I've had for the last decade, so they know all this. All right, we're going to get back on track here and having our Meet the Pros group answer our questions. And as you know, we're here to raise money for Hurricane Ian relief, and that's the big goal. I talked to the guys downstairs during our break that Jason Council from Oscar Pens was so gracious to offer up, and he donated all that down there. Thankfully, you guys put a lot of money in the donation bucket there, so that helped pay for his hard costs and his time. So I thank you for that, and it looks like the raffle is doing really well. So this could be a really good day for Hurricane Ian relief from our community here in Citrus County, and from Katie and Casey Damron. They're not here right now, so I feel comfortable talking about them. These are probably the biggest philanthropic folks that we have in the county. They do a lot of stuff for everyone here. They really do. And they're not about getting their names in the paper or doing any of that stuff. It is quite often they write checks for things in this county that people never know they wrote checks for, to make sure things get done and people get taken care of. So anytime you can patronize this business here at Sodium, I encourage you. These are the people that you want to support, because they support everybody here. I mean everybody. To me, they're bigger than just having an online retail partner in my business. Even though we treat it like business, I consider them personal friends. We go and do things with them. So, all right. First question back. I'm going to throw this one. It's going to be grouper fishing, so get ready, Brandon. Grouper fishing here has always been fantastic, especially the shallow game within 10 miles. What's the most reliable natural bait? If you were looking at Artie's, which ones would you throw first?
For natural bait, pinfish is going to be my go-to. When it's warmer, when it gets really, really cold out and you have to go to dead bait, I go to cut ladyfish. Ladyfish head, chunks when it's really cold. Those two. But artificial-wise, Rapala F-Mag 18, I've been throwing them since I was 5 years old. They do a variety of colors, and they're just a really good bait. And then in the last couple of years, the Nomad DTX 145 from basically 8 feet to 15 feet is the best shallow water grouper plug there is. I've fished with basically all of them. They hold up really well, and they catch a pile of fish.
Can you repeat those numbers?
It's a Nomad DTX 145.
Color.
We'll probably get on that subject, but it depends on the watercolor. Pink is a really good color. Then the natural, they make a greenback. And then in the F-Mag 18, orange is one of the best, and silver is one of the best.
79, they go from 8 on 11.
You're supposed to be the guy in charge of audio. You've got one job. One job. All right, let me reach out to someone else to ask this question. Jeremiah.
Yes.
Grouper, natural, artificial. What are you throwing?
Both. The lures that Brandon would talk about, obviously, it's one of the best ones. Pinfish, and then he likes ladyfish. I like mullet. Cut ropes work well. So, but yeah, artificial wise, what Brandon said, pretty much the same.
What? Here's another one. Staying with shallow water grouper. Here's a minimum rod and reel setup you can utilize to be successful. Because I know if you go out there with something that's not the right stuff, it's over pretty quick. It's like you can hook them, but you can't do anything with them. What is the minimum rod and reel setup? I'll let you go again, Brandon.
In my opinion, minimum, heavy minimum. I use a double X, double extra heavy, and I use a 7, 6, or an 8-foot rod, basically for everything. Especially plug casting, it allows you to get a really long cast. I use nothing less than an 8,000. I use a lot of 10,000, and no less than 50-pound braid on my casting setups, and I use all the way up to 80-pound braid on my bait setups.
JC, I know I saw some pictures. You were out there whacking them yesterday.
Same, really. I mean, extra heavy rods, 8,000 reels, a lot of drag.
Yeah, nutted down. Those were some nice fish. Yeah. I Good stuff, guys.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go to something smaller. To catch numbers of speckled trout, not necessarily the big ones. What's your game plan, James?
I'd say I'll be popping corks for my clients. I mean, you can have, steady action. I use the full horseman corks with a 15-pound leader. I always use a 16-ounce jig head for that slow
Fall.
That slow fall. I don't like a quarter ounce. I think it just falls way too fast. And as far as like what I throw underneath there, sometimes I use the trout tricks, the Z-Mans. Sometimes I'll just nose hook them or run it through the body. With Little Johns, I use, watermelon red. When it's cloudy, sometimes I'll throw the glows.
Yeah.
Those are mainly the only 2 Little Johns that I use for trout. And that, for numbers, I mean, and popping cork's the way to go. I don't really care for popping cork fishing, but sometimes you have to.
Oh, you're not going to get an argument from me. I resist it all the time. I'm like, but I will tell you that 4 horsemen is that's a popping cork. You can pop a cork in 8 feet of water and get fish to come forward.
And with trout, the further you get it away from the boat,
the better off you are.
And that cork right there
is heavy.
It goes.
Yeah, we use these out in Louisiana on some of the big fish, and it sounds like a pelican hit the water when you pop them. It's unbelievable.
And then I also use, a lot of jerk baits and hard baits. I mean, it just all depends on who I got and what we're trying to do.
For numbers. Dallas, what do you do? Ask me because you're sitting there and you don't want to get up.
Well, I want to get a shot.
A lot of trout.
Just numbers.
Just getting numbers. Cal series, jerk shad, white or silver, the glow, and we nose hook it, no weight, with a 3-aught to I'll go to a 6-aught if I just want a heavy hook to
pull it down.
Pull that down just as slow as possible, depending on your depth. That bait is a absolute killer. Also the mirror lures, mirror deans, in the natural colors, that really helps out a lot too, especially once you find a school. And then even live bait, if you got a lot of those smaller pinfish in your traps throughout the day, I'll tail hook those and either put them under a popping cork or just free line them out there, especially during the big moons. I find that you can find big schools of trout together and they will eat that live bait a little better. So that's what I like.
All right, let's move to another question. What's the biggest factor that you guys consider after a big cold front blows through the area, and how do you overcome it or maximize it? Now, we asked before the front before. This is after it blows through, and we got these bluebird skies and this high barometer. What do you do? Sock.
Well, if I'm trying to catch snook are, in my opinion, the most sensitive to the barometric changes. So, theory to me is that they'll go, and this is from bass fishing and stuff, but when that pressure gets real high like that, they'll go find some deeper water to adjust their pressure. So I'm going to look for deep water when we got post-front conditions. Or if you got those big bluebird skies, that's a perfect day to go do some sight fishing.
So kind of either or you could really do it. James, what do you do? Because Cameron's got the camera on.
Well, it usually depends on what I'm targeting, like for trout. And then with the fronts too, obviously like the next day probably isn't a good day to go.
Right.
But sometimes in our situation we have to. So I'll wait for, if we got a northeast wind and it's a blowout tide, I'll wait for as much water I can to get in there and just start working the kelp beds and stuff like that. Fishing, I'm talking about trout, 1 to 2 feet of water, throwing jerk baits and working them real slow. And then wherever I find those trout, I remember, because I'll idle I don't care if it takes me 20 minutes, idle all the way back around, and I'll start over again with that northeast wind, because in our area, we have a lot of good trout fishing with the northeast wind, because you can put it at our back, and we can just cover area. Now, I know some guys don't like to stay down, but usually when we're doing it, In shallow water, you can stay down. I'll stop. When I find one trout, I'll put my power poles down and I'll bass fish that area for my clients. You know, so for the trout, that's what I like to do. You know, you just got to use the make it work for you with that northeast wind and after the cold front start pumping in. So,
Adam, what do you do when it gets that tough?
For me, after a front like that, I actually like the fact that it's clear skies, high sun. That makes it easier for sight fishing. The way I fish is I use smaller flies and I lead the fish big time and just fish it really slow. Just slow everything down. The fish are usually a little more lethargic. They're not really wanting to eat. You can still get and eat from them. You just got to slow everything way down and convince them that they're hungry.
Make it their idea. That's what I like. All right, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, here's another tough question. So get ready, JC. Every angler seems to believe that the full moon and the following day or two makes fishing challenging. What do you think?
I mean, I don't find it that much. Does it affect the bite? Yes, but there'll be certain times of the day where it'll start, they'll get going.
Yeah, they gotta eat.
They gotta eat. You're right.
Yeah, they gotta eat. Jeremiah, what do you think? You are back in high school, aren't you?
On full moon, I really like to fish up through the full moon. You know, then the next day, it kind of seems like to me, we kind of don't chew as much. A couple days afterwards, it gets better and better. But I do like it because the tides are better and get further back. You know, if it's cold, obviously they get lower and they get trapped in holes. But wintertime, those big winds help you out a lot because you can get a lot further back and do a lot of different things.
Sock, you're a moon guy.
Yep. Got a charter. Full moon is on the 10th. I got a trip. We're going to go tomorrow evening. We're going to go fish that full moon. The fishing's definitely a little tougher the following morning.
Right.
But just because they've been so active all night long, so I'll tend to fish little
later in the
day. But I've had some phenomenal days on them right after the full moon.
That's how I fish too. I just fish later in the day on the full moon days. It always seems to be better. All right, here's a question I was actually asked earlier. Do any of you utilize a tide app on your phone that you rely on and you find very useful? Because that's a question I get all the time. It's like, how do you figure out these tides here? They change. They're just tough to figure out. Have you figured one out, Brandon?
I use the one on my Simrad. I mean, it seems to be pretty accurate. That's the one I use all the time. I don't look at any other. I look at my Simrad. And that's it.
That's it.
Yep.
James?
I have one. I'm like Brandon. The Simrads are pretty spot on, but I use one called iTides. And what I've done is every tide that it says, like for today, high tide, it says it's at 2:10. I add about 30 to 45 minutes to it. And that seems to be pretty accurate. If I don't have my Simrad up to where I can look at it, but usually when I'm heading in after my trip, I plan for the next day and I look at it. And that Simrad is pretty spot on. It's pretty spot on.
Dallas, what about you?
Same deal. I run with Rance that offers the same stuff as the Simrad. They're pretty much sister companies going on there. I use a app called Windfinder as well. Windfinder's really good. It only updates 2 or 3 times in a day, but I really like that one. And then having a good radar app is fantastic. I have I think it's Sky Tower by Fox 13 in Tampa, and that gives you winds up to date all the time. Weather, it'll even holler at me when I see a front line coming in. Oh, you're in danger. Perfect. Thanks. See you. So things like that are great. But that Windfinder is another one that really helps out a lot.
Yeah.
Tide, winds, weather.
I have one that I rely on that's pretty accurate. Now, albeit, the wind here can change the tides a lot. Like if you get something out of the east or the west, it'll either add water or take away water in a snap. But there's a blue badge that has a treble hook on it. It's called Fishing Points. I use that one a lot. That one seems to be fairly accurate. Doesn't give you but certain tide stations, but you can predict where you are in between there, north or south of it, and figure out the tide. And then my radar. I use my radar a lot. It doesn't have the tide information, but it'll give me that wind information that I can interpret the tides a little bit better. All right. Kids. This area never had a real snooks population 20 years ago. And I know that because I used to fish here. It just never seemed like there was a lot of snook. You'd catch one every once in a while, like you do in Steenhatchee now. But what's changed about these fish that there's so many here now? Because it's been kind of a secret for the last 5 or 6 years how many snook are here, but it's getting out now. It's getting out now. But there's some real serious snook fishing that goes on here now. I mean, in fact, there are many days when I fish with my clients that's what we go after because they're a lot easier to catch than the other species. It's harder to catch redfish than it is snook. Why is that? Why are they so prolific now than they weren't before? Adam, what do you think?
I don't know. I mean, the fish are definitely changing. I mean, there's snook all the way up in Cedar Key now, where 20 years ago, I was talking to some of the old timer tarpon guides, and 20 years ago they didn't see any snook here, like none.
Yeah.
And now, a lot of days for me, I'm catching snook 3-to-1 over redfish, which is crazy. Like I was out a few days. I was out this past week. There was snook on every flat I pulled, as far as the eye could see, and there was a handful of redfish mixed in with them. But the snook are definitely outnumbering them. I think some of it has to do with the springs, but I really think the snook themselves are changing.
Yeah, they're getting more hardier, more resilient. You are the snook god, so what do you think, Sop?
I have a lot of different theories about what's going on in this area. The first thing that really, back before we caught snook in this zone, used to be able to catch them north of here on the hot water discharge. And when they shut that discharge down, that's about the time when a lot of snook started to show up, on the outside. And we've always had some snook that would go up in the Homosassa and Crystal River, even 20 years ago. Dan Clymer used to catch them 20 years ago. But I think, between it's getting warmer, you can ask Brandon, the offshore guys, they're starting to catch species that were only, South Florida. Yellowtail snapper out there.
Yeah.
Lionfish. There's Goliath grouper on a lot of the nearshore. Those are things that weren't here 20 years ago.
That's right.
Either. So I think everything is starting to move north.
To adapt.
Yeah.
Maybe even the water quality down, south of the fish around red
That
tide,
could push them
stuff
up.
like that.
That's all true.
Could be a lot of things.
Could be all of those. Jeremiah, what's your thoughts on why they're so prolific now?
I don't think we've had a really cold winter here in quite a while. I mean, it's you get
What was the last one? 2010 here?
No, we had one 4 or 5 years ago in Ozella.
Yeah, but it wasn't.
It wasn't like that. 2010, it was like in there. We've got about 50 degrees in Tampa there for like 3 weeks.
That's the other thing too. You look at the mangroves, like up on the North Shore, and then even by Salt River, they used to just be all marsh. Even in the river, there's some islands and mangroves growing that have never been there.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I do notice that. As you move further north, you see fewer and fewer mangroves because it's not warm enough for them there. But here it is. So yeah, I see that. All right, here's another question. The tarpon fishery here is so varied from Homosassa to Cedar Key. Is there an opportunity for the average Joe, not you guys so much, but the average Joe, to jump a tarpon, and what months would be the best chance for them for the average guy that's not going to be fly fishing, who might just be throwing pinfish in front of him or something like that? What's his best chance to jump a tarpon here? JC?
Probably June.
Probably June. Probably be the best month.
Yeah. I'm not giving that any location.
What do you think, Brad?
I would say middle of May to the end of June is It's some of the best tarpon fishing I've ever had is in the middle of May.
Yeah.
It just depends on when that big migration of fish comes through. But like as I can remember, the best day I've ever had was May 16th. Period.
Yeah.
But usually right there around the beginning of June is always really good.
All right. Cross that one off the list. Is there a wind direction that you prefer here that offers great fishing? Is there one that makes fishing poor? I mean, on average, I know there's different situations, but is there one wind direction that's like, oh crap? And is there one wind direction that's like, oh, this is not going to be so bad. This is a good wind direction. Is there one of those, Dallas?
Wind from the east, fishing the least. Wind from the best, or west, fishing the best. Time of year too, you get an east wind. A lot of times that can mean you just had that high pressure come over top of you.
That's right.
And that can make fishing pretty
Challenging.
bad.
Yeah.
So that sucks. But if east wind, not with a big high pressure system, whatever. I do like a big west wind for a lot of water, especially this time of year, fishing the flats and inshore mangroves. So I do relatively like a west wind. I like seeing that.
Jeremiah?
Anywhere from a south wind all the way to a west wind, especially if it's cloudy. Obviously, that's going to be your front. Then as soon as the clouds break free, I don't really care to fish from the northwest to the northeast. Probably that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Thought you were going to come up with a tricky little saying like Dallas here, like, went from the south, they open their mouth or something.
He took it all. He's
All right, back to the grouper game. What water temp and time of year is the best? I know there are several times of year when the grouper thinks doing their thing, but the best, right? It's the absolute best. Best water temp, best month. Brandon.
As me and JC grew up, me and JC would always fish offshore a lot in the wintertime, and we always found that if that water temperature is 67 degrees to 72 degrees, you're going to have the best fishing, which is going to be October. Last year it was more November than it was October, so November's always my favorite month, but it's not open catch and release, but March and in the beginning of April is those two times are the best time to catch them, absolutely, especially on artificial.
Okay, good. That's good information. Does anyone got anything to add to that? Any other grouper info? All right. What is the first consideration you guys make before deciding where you will fish or where you will begin fishing? Adam, first consideration.
Wind and tide.
Wind and tide.
It's always wind and tide are what decide where I fish every day and where my next spot's going to be and where my next spot's going to be. It all comes down to wind and tide.
Sock, first consideration.
It's the tide.
Tide.
The level of the tide and the direction.
The height of the tide and,
Right.
and the direction of current?
Yes.
Because you're a Snook guy, so you gotta
I know
have current.
if it's the bottom of the outgoing, I'm gonna go here. If it's about to turn, just depending on what part of the tide it's at,
Okay,
that makes it.
makes a big difference. James, anything to add to that?
I mean, I'm the same way. Wind direction, tide. Some spots are better on certain parts of the tide. That's pretty much the same thing. I mean, it's amazing. You can hit one spot at the beginning of the tide and I catch nothing. I'm like, oh, I guess it's happening here. I'll come back here later. Come back to the same exact spot and hammer them.
Wow.
Later in the tide,
All right. Here's a question. When is the best season to expect good action fishing in the Homosassa, Crystal River, or Withlacoochee rivers? Actually in the river, like fishing in Crystal River, in Withlacoochee River, or Homosassa. What's the best time of the year to fish in those actual rivers, Brandon?
December to the end of February.
Yeah.
Gonna
Just
be
when
your
it's
best.
cold.
Yep.
They're just in there for temperature refuge. You agree with that, JC?
Yeah. Me and Brandon grew up fishing in the Fish River all the time.
Yeah.
It was always the coldest days were the better.
Best days.
Now, year round though, largemouth bass, a lot of people don't know this, but Like JC said, I grew up across the street from him. We would go out and we could catch 40, 50 bass in 4 hours in the afternoon. It's not quite that good now, but you can go year round and catch a bunch of bass.
Yeah.
And Homosassa too. I mean,
Yeah,
bass fishing's.
Adam tells me that all the time.
The grass growing in Crystal River now, with say Crystal River has done with that. I think, in my opinion, the last 6 years we haven't had even the trout fishing. Like when I was a kid, the trout fishing in the river was phenomenal, and I think that had a lot to do with not having any grass and having that now. It's the estuary of what they have in there. A lot of the saltwater fish are going to come in there even more than they have been.
Let's jump to fly fishing. Fly fishing for tarpon in clear water and bright sun, which is, what the morning looks like most of the time. What's your leader going to look like? Length and breakdown. What is it going to look like?
Length, I'm usually 10, 11 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And here, I tie an IGFA style leader so I can break it if I have a shark issue. So I'm usually running a piece of 16 or 20 in my leader. The bite at the end of it's usually 40.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And depending on how clear the water is and how the fish are acting, the length of that bite gets longer and shorter.
JC?
Pretty much the same. I don't necessarily tie the IGFA for everyone, but I always have a piece of 20 in there just so it's the same scenario.
You can break a fish off if it's getting chased or whatever.
But I'm usually about 10 foot per leader.
Oh, wow. That's
same size bite, 40 pound.
40 pound. Okay. How many fly fishing anglers are in here, or people that do fly fish? So we got several. Oh, wow. Good. Good stuff. All right, get ready, Jeremiah. Speckled trout move into the creek systems and rivers. What time of year?
Starting probably now. Everything's starting to move in.
Mhm.
The old timers tend to pull in September when they come from offshore and start to move. And then when the water usually gets down to the high to mid 60s and lower, they just keep moving. So just trying to get that warmer water.
Okay. Dallas, what's your experience with it? Do you fish the creeks much for those trout?
Yeah, mud boat season's coming up, so I find them a lot wintertime back there. The colder it gets, the further back they go. You find Jeremiah's boat, you know you're in a good spot.
Just what you wanted to hear.
Just kidding. Don't ever do that, Jeremiah.
Yeah.
I get scared.
Yeah.
You see him, I'm like, hey, Jay, sorry. But, slow down your presentation during that time too, and you'll help catch more back there because they can get up there spooky, almost like Snook and Redfish. They'll get real spooky back there during that cold. So slow it down, and you'll find them.
I got two questions here that are kind of related. You only get to pick one hard bait for this is inshore flats fishing, snook, redfish, trout. What is it and what color is it? I'm going to go with JC first on this one.
One hard bait?
One hard bait. What color is it and what is it?
Probably gonna throw a mirror.
Probably going to be a mirrodine. What color?
Probably a black and goldish or just a regular blackback, white or silver side.
Sock?
Probably a skitterwalk or a Top Dog Junior is good. Black and silver mullet pattern. I'm not a big hard bait.
No, I
It
know.
just has to look like a mullet.
A hog leg. James, what about you?
I like the top dogs, especially for trout when it's real shallow. I've caught some of my biggest trout from top water in real shallow water. I like top water whenever it's real cold and low. And for redfish, probably a mirrodine, like suspended twitch bait.
What colors?
I like the natural pattern ones that look like pinfish. Those are usually
Like the skin series and
Skin
stuff
series,
like that.
yeah.
Brandon, I got to ask you that question too, because I know you like to throw fake stuff.
Lately, I've been throwing the Catch 2000 a lot, black and silver.
Yeah. Well, it's not lately. You've been throwing a Catch 2000 for as long as
Yeah.
I've known you.
I really trout fishing, and I really like an orange belly. It just has always been really good for me. Blackback, greenback, the orange underneath the belly is just one of my go-tos.
Good information. Good information. All right. Now I'm going to turn it around. Same question. What soft bait? What, whatever brand, doesn't matter, and what color? Brandon, again.
DOA 5.5-inch glow jerk bait catches everything around here.
And it has. It really has. Dallas.
Same deal. I mean, that's the bait. And if that one there, I'd have to go with a Lil John. Just a classic Lil John. Anything with a red flake in it. That'll work.
All right, Adam.
Jerk shad,
Jerk shad.
always for me.
What color?
Light, anything like white or light golds, any of those colors. Beer run, those.
Thank you.
Just
Thank
a,
you.
just a light,
I'm going to buy you a beer when this is James?
I'm saying the 5.5-inch is great. All depends on what you're targeting and how you work it. And then I like a Little John with a 16. I like the bourbon. 16 with a 16
I
pound.
like bourbon too, but
Well, that
JC?
I'm like glow jerk bait.
Glow jerk bait. You guys grew up together too much. Jeremiah?
Probably gonna be the glow because it's easy. It's easy for our clients and they catch a pile of fish. I mean, you can throw a little kid out and he can just reel it in slow and he's gonna catch fish. I mean, it's just an easy bait and it catches a lot.
Sock?
I do throw a lot of soft plastics. Mirror Little John or a Reaction Innovation swim bait, skinny dipper.
Color?
It's just a white, kind of looks like the Slam Shady color.
Good stuff. Right. Those are questions I know everyone in this room wanted to know. What's your favorite leader and terminal tackle look like to fish natural bait, like pinfish, mud minnows, live shrimp? What would that setup look like, Dallas?
I use.
What size hook, what leader weight?
For most everything, I go to 30 pound. The Inshore series Seagar has 100 yards on it for the same price as almost the Blue Label. That's the stuff I use. If it's Snook season, I go up to 40 pound. If it's not Snook season, I just leave that 30 for Redfish and Snook, and I'll drop down to 20 when we're targeting trout. Hook size 6/0 to 3/0 are all in my box, but
Just depends on the size of the bait.
exactly depends on the bait. And the bigger hook you use, the less time that bait's going to stay alive, because that little bit of weight change can carry him and make him wear out a lot faster. I throw a ton of mud minnows, and if you go with a 3/0 on a mud minnow, that thing will live all day long. When you're done fishing, you can take him off, throw him in your live well, and he'll be alive tomorrow. So.
Good to know. James, you got anything to add to that?
For redfish, when I'm throwing bait like shrimp, I like to throw a Full Horseman makes their little a little hook with the weight that's on the shaft. I use that. I'll pop the tail off. I'll run it through there, and it looks more like there's no jig.
Right.
Actually, with that weight inside that shaft right there, you're actually able to really send that thing, especially with
Without throwing it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it works well. When I'm doing like live pinfish, I use the older Mutu lights, the 4 circle hooks. People like to use circle hooks, but they can set the hook. I'll use the SSW. I think that's what it is. I use those, and so people that can set the hook. And for redfish, I mean, mainly use 30 pound leader. And then if I know I'm specifically targeting snook, I'll use anywhere from 40 to 50. Just because they hammer that thing. And
yeah, it's a lot.
And then trout, I lighten up everything. I go down to 10 pound braid, 15 pound leader, and I do all my trout artificially. So it all just depends on what I'm using for the day.
All right. This is a fun one. Is there a superstition that you have which points to poor fishing? Jeremiah.
I just make things up as I go.
I know you do.
That's a big fishing guy.
Just make stuff up.
You're superstitious about airboats. You're superstitious. But But there's no one
Banana
super.
used to be the fun one, just because
Yeah,
I don't
the
believe in
bananas.
it. But there's actually a real story with banana that you tell people after where the superstition came from. So that's, like I said, I just make them up as I go.
Dallas,
No bananas.
no bananas.
And like he said, it's fun. You can make up a great story behind it and have that.
JC,
Same thing.
bananas.
Yeah, so I found like a whole bunch of them in my cooler the other day.
Yeah, once your friends know that it's a kryptonite, then you count on finding them everywhere. What about you, Adam?
Hats.
Hats.
If I wear a hat and have a bad day, I never wear that same hat fishing again.
That could get expensive.
I have 5 hats I fish in, and that's it.
That's it. Interesting. I got to ask you, Sock, what is it?
I don't have any.
You don't have any.
I've got pictures holding big gags with bananas coming out of them.
Brandon, I know it probably doesn't bother you either, but
I do not have one.
you do not have one.
But I do have a client though, retired guy, just like Adam. He literally wears. I've been fishing with him for 6 years. He has worn the same exact hat every single time. He's changed it twice, had bad days, and that is the only hat. I'm talking one hat for the last 6 years. I don't know how long it's gonna last, but I turned around for it 4 or 5 times.
Too funny. All right, here's a good one that a lot of folks are going to want to know. What's the deciding factor on recognizing if a spot is productive or not, and how long do you give it? Just on the surface, productive or not. When you come up to a spot, what's the deciding factor whether you think, hey, this is going to hold fish, and then how long do you give it before you give up on it? Sock.
If there's no mullet activity, I know right away, things may not be going on. There might be mullet there, but
Yeah.
if they're not showing me,
Yeah, like they're
I'll
active.
only give it just a few minutes a lot of times because I know where they should be. And if you put a fresh bait out there in front of them and drag it through them, if they're eaten, it's going to get eaten immediately.
Yes.
So if that doesn't happen, I'll do it 3 or 4 times. I'll move up 10 or 15 feet, try it right up, and then I'm out.
Yeah.
In just a few minutes.
James?
Yeah, I'm a run and gunner. I mean, I'll roll up in a spot and I'm looking for live birds, the mullet, and I'll give it maybe 30 seconds. Maybe about 30 seconds.
I've heard this about you. I heard that guy.
And then I'm out, because the fish are there. You can see them. They're
This
not-
might be your military mission stuff. If you can't kill something real fast, you're on to the next target.
It's called combat fishing, man. They're around, man. I'll burn fuel. I won't burn some fuel.
JC.
I look for life.
Yeah.
It's got to have some kind of life to it, whether it be like little small bait fish or the mullet.
Mhm.
And I only give it 5-10 minutes. Like Sock said, you know where they're sitting.
Yeah.
If they're not there.
Time of year has a big thing to do
Yeah.
with it all.
Yeah.
I think we can all agree. Wintertime, I'll sit on a spot 2 or 3 times as long as I will as the hotter months.
And the tide has a lot to do with like this time of year. I like to get out there when it's real shallow and wait for redfish to push to me. So that's I always tell my people, hey, the first stop we're going to go to, it's going to be low and slow, but we might get a shot at 50 redfish pushing right to us.
Yeah.
So I'll sit there for that, until somebody drives over them, and then you gotta leave anyways, So, which happens a lot.
It happens to Jeremiah a lot too. Blood pressure goes up.
Yeah, we had about 7 of them come on.
All right, here is one, but I think Dallas got it. How do you determine the hook size when using live bait? And that's basically the size of the bait.
Size of the bait.
Yeah. The smaller the bait, the smaller the hook, and the bigger the bait, vice versa. So we'll knock that one off the list. Flounder. Are there areas in the Nature Coast Zone where these things can be targeted with regularity at all? Brandon?
Yeah, I mean, it's not consistent, but yes, the Spoil Islands from Crystal River to North Yankeetown,
Yeah.
that's where I've had the best success. I know a couple of the Homosassa guides fish the rock piles, especially the ones with a lot of sand, a lot of white around them in the summertime with shrimp on the bottom or a slow-moving jig.
Yeah.
Some of those guys do really, really well, but you definitely want those rocks with a lot of color around them.
suck? Anything on that one?
Spoil Islands, I've caught them up to 23 inches, and it's usually in the summer when we catch them out there. But you'll get them in the creeks in the wintertime too. Like in the Yankee Town type creeks. A lot of oyster,
Yeah.
a lot of sand.
A lot of sand gnats.
Yeah.
All right. Dirty or stained water? What lure and color gives you the best chance to be successful? JC.
And dirty or stained water?
Dirty, like if it's been windy or you just get a lot of rain and the water's kind of tea and a little
I
milky.
kind of like matching it with the water color.
Yeah, picking the same.
So,
Yeah.
Like the tea color.
Tea color, pick copper or something like that. Orange, black and golden orange. What say you, Adam?
I agree with matching it most of the time. I will go dark sometimes. Like if the water's real stained, I like to throw black.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time, I'll match pretty close to the water color.
Dallas?
They said same thing I would say right off the bat, but there's a lot of glow series out there, and that color, we talked about it earlier, the color works great here all over the place. I don't think your bait's down there glowing and the fish can see it. It's amazing. No. But that glow color, for some reason, I find it helps, especially near the spoil banks area when you're trout fishing. That's one of my go-tos out there, and that water's pretty much dirty all the time.
I believe in picking colors that are close to the color of the water. I will tell you, purple works really good. Purple has always worked really good in backcountry stained water. It really has. Purple's always been a good color. All right, you guys knocked out those. Keeping going here. All right. This is one of those FYIs, and we have one with Mike Shipley back there a couple of years ago when we were fishing with Mike K. How do you handle a seabird who has been tangled in your fishing lines or hooked? Because a lot of people do some stupid stuff, like they just cut the line and let this thing fly into another mangrove, and probably entangle another bird or two or three as it's hanging there.
And then it ends up at my house.
And then it ends up at Adam's house. Adam has a lot of pets.
And they're not.
Every time I see him, I see I got a pileated woodpecker. I was like, is that a new addition to the family? But how do you hand them on your boat?
Well, if you take your net and you're not swinging at them, just letting everyone know that, I'll literally scoop them up, and my net's big enough to where I can get them in the net, and then I kind of use the back bar of the net as almost a pinpoint so you don't get bit. You grab them, and just as gently as you can, remove the hook. If the hook is in such a situation that you're going to hurt or kill that bird by removing it, cut that line.
Mm-hmm.
So many of these hooks will rust out of these birds now, and obviously if it's bad enough, do due diligence to take it somewhere safe, but if not, make sure you get that line out of there. Almost every time it's happened, I've been able to remove that hook just like a fish.
Yeah.
And then you can have a fun moment of throwing a bird up in the air, and then when you're done. That's what I do with them.
James?
It depends on if it stirs your rod and reel. But I've actually had them hooked before and have to reel them in. And then what I'll do is I have a towel.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw it over top of them, and then try to isolate the hook or whatever and figure out what's going on, cut it out. If I think it's going to do more damage trying to cut it out, I'll just leave it in, It just depends, But mainly get the line away from them,
Brandon, you're laughing.
Well, I was fishing next to James here last year in a frigate bird. I literally swooped his line, ripped the rod right out of his flying sand, and just tried to keep out. That was the funniest thing I've seen.
Don't find a $700 rod reel out in flat.
I was wondering where you were going with that whole they'll take the rod. I was like, what kind of bird? Pterodactyl? What is that?
His rod was so bright.
It had like a 9-foot wingspan. Pretty story.
Well, I actually do the towel method as well, but I do like your idea. I think that's a good idea. I have a bigger hoop style net, and that would make a lot of sense.
I do have something to add to that.
Okay.
If you do have a hook that's lodged and you can't get it out, most people should have a pair of wire cutters on your boat.
Mm-hmm.
And
You can clip it
The
right.
best thing to do is clip it as close to where it enters the bird as possible.
Yeah.
And just let it go so you don't injure it anymore.
Yeah.
But wire cutters are pretty important to have on your boat.
I've learned that because I looked at me.
What's the best way to get crab trap off your prop?
Yeah, we're learning all kinds of stuff here today. Here's one that we talk about quite a bit. Most important to you, the pros, having the wind or the light behind you, either one. Or is the current direction more relevant for what you're doing? Sock?
I like to have the wind at my back.
Okay.
And current, it depends how I'm fishing. A lot of times, natural bait fishing, I want to be drifting, bail open, drifting my baits with the tide.
Right.
If I'm fishing plastics, I want to be turned around, casting into the tide.
And bringing it back.
Right.
That's how I fish. JC?
Depends on what kind of fishing I'm doing. Like if I'm sight fishing, I want the sun at my back.
Yeah.
I mean, wind is wind, and
Yeah.
I gotta push into it. I'll push into it. But I still want to be able to see out in front of me further.
Yeah. Jeremiah?
Kind of like with him, but with side casting, try not to use trolling layers as much. Current, wind, sun behind you.
Yeah.
Definitely, that's what I like.
Yeah, I don't like to have the sun directly behind me. I can see better, and I know my folks can see better, but I know I'm silhouetted being on a pulling platform, and I'm not easy to hide. So what I'll do is I try to keep the sun on either side of me and only have this much to work with. That way I'm kind of lit up, and I kind of blend into the background rather than be, completely shadowed out, and they can tell, hey, it's that guy again. And it works really good for me. But I always put light ahead of wind. That's why everyone goes, I can't believe that guy's that old and he's pulling into the wind. It's pulling like 15 today. What is he thinking? But it's because I'm trying to see most of the time. I got people wanting to buy raffle tickets. I'm going to tell him to call. Sorry about that. But people want to help. All right, let's do something a little fun here. I'm going to ask every pro this. Favorite species to target in the order of preference? Sock?
Tarpon.
Tarpon number 1. What's number 2 and 3?
Snook. Redfish.
Jeremiah?
Redfish, probably gator trout, and then I guess it'd be snook.
JC?
Tarpon,
Tarpon?
snook, and red.
James?
Redfish, trout, and snook.
Brendan?
Grouper, snook, and gator trout are about even there.
Neck and neck. Dallas?
Snook, redfish,
Third?
probably trout.
Probably trout. Adam?
Tarpon, redfish, snook.
That's more tarpon than I thought. Interesting. All right. Knock these two off the list. We're going down. I'm going to let some of you in the audience ask questions soon. All right. On higher tide phases, is it better to go further back or fish the outside points? Because this is kind of a consensus. Sometimes as that tide height comes up, many of us get lured on going further back, and then some of us go to the outside to fish the points. What say you?
I do the outside points. I like going far back. I go as far back as I can when the water is low, and I go as far as I can on the low water. Sometimes I can't get as far as I would like to. When the tide gets really high, I always just go bang points on the outside.
Brandon?
Yeah, I would say the same. I like fishing the outside points on the high water. For redfish, though, I do not. And a lot of these people may disagree with me, but especially when I'm pulling, I like a weak tide. If it moves a half a foot, I love it. For sight fishing redfish, that is the tide I'm looking for.
Because they don't move around.
They don't move. That water, that fast moving water, repositions them so much. But I really like that slow moving tide for redfish.
JC?
Same. I like that slow moving. Like you said, I'll push as far back as I can. And then
On the low, but on the high, go to the outside points. Because that, it sounds counterintuitive to most people. They think, oh, water's going high. Maybe I should go all the way to the back. And I'm sure there's fish back there. I'm sure there is. But they'd be so spread apart. What makes one place better than another? Interesting. All right. Conversely, on lower tides, is it better to focus deeper in the creeks or further on the outside flats? Which kind of answered that in a way. But I'll get James' opinion first.
I mean, it depends on the time of the year. This time of year, on that low tide, when it's warm, I mean, I always start on the outside and work my way in.
Mm-hmm.
I try to stay ahead of the tide. Like,
Yeah.
you can hit a tide up at, say, Mangrove. It starts coming in there where it's still going out, down south.
Yep.
So I'll start, I have my best luck on low water redfish on the outside, and as it starts to come in, I keep going south and I keep going east. Because I can start on the outside, and then I can work my way all the way in back towards, like, say, Key Pass.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the tide is just getting going back there.
Right.
And then turn around on the high tide and come right back out to the outside and get them again. So there's a lot to,
That's really the riddle here.
It is.
That's truly the riddle here. Sock, you got anything to add to that?
James just nailed it.
Yeah.
I mean, depending on where you fish, Mangrove Point to my house is almost like 3 hours difference nearly. And it's the same as far as the backcountry. Way east in Salt River is like 3 hours different. So you can follow that perfect part of the tide all the way back or all the way south.
But you have to move, and I think that's probably the weekend angler doesn't understand how far you have to move to continue to stay in fish. It's like Jacksonville and that East Coast game sometimes. It's like if you're fishing one spot for 20 minutes and you're not catching fish, well, guess what? You're not catching fish. You got to go. It's a constant move all the time. Guys still buying tickets for the raffle that aren't even here. That's great. All right, here's a touchy question. As guides, what do you see being the biggest threat to the Nature Coast fishery? The biggest threat in the future to the Nature Coast fishery, Brandon?
Biden.
A few things. The airboaters, for one, the influx of people coming here is just moving here.
Yeah.
All over the parkway here. I would love to see pull and troll only zones. It seems that, and I know a lot of people it's a great economy for everyone, but the scallopers tearing up the seagrass is just astronomical.
Yeah.
And I would love to see pull and troll zones created here that the grass, we want to keep that grass the way it is or else we're going to lose our fishery.
Jeremiah, what do you see the biggest threat?
Kind of like what Brandon was talking about, just kind of the lack of smartness that people have when it comes to boats.
There is a lot of etiquette that needs to happen here, and I can tell you because I've already watched this movie. Remember, I'm much older than you guys. I watched this in Tampa Bay growing up, where when I was growing up in Pinellas County was a densely populated county. Even when I was growing up, it was probably like 300, 400,000 people, but it swelled to 1 million. And it's the same thing. The more people that you have, the tougher it is to control what's going on here. And this is the beginning of it. And it will get harder and harder and harder to a point where that gets to be super challenging. I think pull and troll is an excellent idea, but if you guys don't start lobbying for it now, it won't happen because the more people you get here, the users won't want it. We tried that in Tampa Bay, and it got to be where actually the guides were fighting it harder than anything else because they wanted to be moving about. James.
I want to add something. I mean, I think I always ask people when they get on my boat, hey, what are you guys going to do today? And they tell me, I want to get a limit of this. I want limited reds, limited trout, limited snook. I'm just like, I think our area is getting hammered with
Over conservation.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't mean you're a bad guide or a fisherman if you don't come home with a limit of fish every single day. You know, like for like all of us at the plantation, we all stopped doing table shots and all that stuff because we don't.
That is a good thing.
We don't need to promote
You don't want to,
fish
you don't want to promote that.
and kill it, you know?
And in the long run, it helps your business.
Yeah. I mean, I know that's what our job is to do, but I don't care if you get all 5 of your trout.
Right.
And I don't care if you get your redfish. If I take you out and I find you 3 big 32-inch redfish, that's a
great day.
That's a great day.
Well, and it's, as you guys will find out, the more you educate the client on taking the picture and releasing most of the fish and just harvesting a few of the fish, that's going to be way better for you, because you will fish yourself out of business. It's going to happen. It will absolutely happen. I've watched the collapse of the fishery in Louisiana. It's not nearly the fishery it was, and I've been fishing there for 25 years. And people will go, this is the best place I've ever been to. But they have no idea because they don't have a point of reference that I do. So like Clymer and like Tony and like these guys that have been here forever, they were used to a different benchmark than you're used to. And the guys behind you will be used to a different, so they never know. They never know what's good and what's bad. And then people that just move here, hey, I just got here from Chicago, Illinois. What are you guys complaining about? This place is awesome. There's all kinds of fish. But they don't know that we have half the fish that we had 20 years ago. So what I mean? So it's our job as stewards to figure that out for everybody. And let them know. It's like, hey, we're going to take a lot more pictures of you leaning over the side of the boat, releasing them and doing stuff like that. And in the end, you'll get the right client that wants to fish with you. That's what you'll do. You'll groom that client instead of getting the client that always wants to fillet fish. I'm not anti-harvest altogether. I'm just saying there has to be something that handled smartly, or you risk it. Yes, sir, Mark.
See, I don't know if you guys know this. About a month or 2 ago, they just had an all-kill shark tournament in Palm Beach County for all the triple and quad motor assholes with the 36,
That's probably a good.
And
Why
didn't they have a crackhead?
The shark populations are kind of out of balance now, and a lot of it's out of balance is because of the big kills that we've had with red tide and things like that. And now you have a disproportionate number of predators versus prey.
I read this supposed to have another one.
Yeah, we were in Flamingo this past couple of weeks ago, and every fish you caught got eaten by a shark. Every fish. No matter, even when we went up to 4,000 size reels, and you got the fish in as quick as you could, water temperature was cooler there because it had been raining. You put that fish in the water, good speed, not holding it out of the water for nothing, put it right back in the water, it would swim hard, right, and shoot through the grass, and you're like, he's okay. You'd pull from here to the back of that room, and 5 sharks would be circling out of here trying to bird dog that thing out of there, rush them up, and you just see them cut them in half.
Bull sharks?
Lemon sharks.
I had
Mostly lemon.
600 red snapper and grouper in 2 months get eaten. In 2 months of fishing, 600 red grouper and snapper.
Yeah.
I had one day I went through 68 hooks from sharks, and that's moving 20 miles throughout.
But it was that way in Key Largo in '63.
Yep. And everything balances
sharks
out.
have always been there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But yeah, it is. The shark thing can be a problem. All right. Here's a kind of a cool question, because I have a lot of people say I've never caught a fish with a spoon. Do you fish on the nature coast with bladed baits like spoons, spinner baits, and chatter baits? Jeremiah, do you fish with those baits?
I do, and I really like to use them like on an overcast day. And that was when we were all growing up. That was
it.
Gold spin.
Yep.
Gold spin and mirror lure, and it was all you needed. I didn't even use baits. Hell, you didn't even really need a troll there. You just line it up, do spins.
Sock? I can see you. You can't hide behind Josh.
I love throwing a gold spoon, and my favorite one is a Johnson Silver Minnow Gold, but the 1/8 ounce.
The
It's
small
like a
one.
little
Yes,
mini.
it's real small.
And you didn't ask me about, my fly choice, but my fly choice would be a
Dupree spoon.
spoon.
The Dupree spoon.
I'm a big spoon guy, and I've caught a lot of snook, trout, and redfish, but not really a big bladed bait guy.
Yeah.
I've caught snook on a chatterbait at night.
Yeah.
But gold spoons.
Do you think that's because the water's so clear here that they're kind of put off by the chatterbait? Because
I just haven't used them much.
Yeah, I go north and fish north of Withlacoochee, going to Cedar and Swanee. I'll use a chatterbait all day and catch everything.
I bet you they would work.
They work great there. Any thoughts?
I love gold spoons.
Gold spoons.
If it's overcast or crappy weather, it's a gold spoon's usually my go-to search bait.
Yeah.
I've been
If I just
using
want to cover water.
the clear bladed chatterbait a bunch lately.
Have you?
Not gold, silver, the clear bladed one.
Yeah.
I've had good success with it, especially on the Snook.
Yeah, just the vibe.
Yep.
I like the Redfish Magic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
That's a good spinnerbait.
Counts as spinnerbait, spoon, whatever.
Yeah, it's a
Metal
that's good. That's good.
I like that one a lot.
All right, knock that one off the list. If you got kids, little kids, what's the best way here on the Nature Coast, guys, that you can guarantee that they're going to be entertained and you're going to keep them busy, they're not going to lose interest, you're going to catch fish? Where do you take them? What do you do, James?
I take them fishing. I still go target
Same
redfish,
ones?
trout. I mean, it all depends, you know. Like I'll try and find a school of reds, you know, even if they're small, let them catch them. Won't circle hook because if you start throwing jigs, you like to go get foot hook. Now, if I'm trout fishing, what I'll do is I'll take a circle hook and I'll put it on the 5.5 inch jerk bait.
Yep.
And just throw it as far as you can, and you know, you feel something, just start reeling. And a lot of times the trout can get hooked up on that circle hook. I don't really go out and look for like, I mean, I guess some guys can go out and look for grunts and all that stuff, but I try to like get them in there and like get them involved in like the hunt, the process of,
Yeah.
you know.
The process of fishing so much as the result.
Yeah. You know, and then most of the time it works out. And when they catch that big redfish or big snook or whatever, like, man, you know.
Jeremiah, when you're not teaching them profanity, what are you teaching them?
Kind of the same as James, if I notice that they're kind of starting to dance here, if it is kind of a tough day trying to do it for some inshore rocks, they go catch snapper. And
That would be a good plan.
sometimes, even if their belts are on there, you can give them a little hook just to catch moonfish. I love it.
Yeah.
Give them something to keep busy.
You got anything to add to that? I know you probably don't get as many kids.
I don't get as many kids, but when my kid was younger, we would try to fish for about 4 hours doing the redfish snook trout game, and if that didn't pan out, it was inshore rocks for mangrove snapper.
Yeah, mangrove snapper. That would be probably my ripcord too, for sure. That one's gone. That one's gone. In your opinion, what is the minimum depth of water game fish are most comfortable in that you target? Because we'll get people that try to fish way too skinny. They're up there fishing with the grass sticking out of the water. But what's the minimum depth where they feel like, okay, you can start fishing here and you got a shot all the time? Brandon.
I would say like a foot.
Foot of
Maybe
water.
A foot of water, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of where I really like for redfish, especially fishing that 10 inches to 15 inches, I would say.
Okay. Sock?
Well, I would say they're a little more comfortable in about 2 feet of water. You know, they're still on edge when they're in 10, 12 inches.
Yeah.
Very easy to spook. But to get in there and have comfortable fish that are
2 foot is dumb
2 foot, yeah.
They're dummy.
Yeah.
You would agree, JC?
Yeah, I'd say about 2 foot.
About 2 foot.
Like when I'm sight fishing, I like to be trusting the bottom.
Yeah.
It depends on which way the tide's moving, too.
Yeah, if the tide's leaning in,
If
you
the
can
tide's
go a
falling-
little thinner if it's
If the
falling
tide's
out.
falling, the fish don't like to get as shallow. If the tide's coming in, they'll go a lot skinnier than they will on a falling tide.
I've seen all that happen here. Another one here. Are moon phases worth paying attention to for snook fishing and tarpon fishing? JC?
Yeah. I mean, on the snook side of it, depends on when they're moving in and out, but like for me tarpon fishing,
Mm-hmm.
that move and that migration,
Yeah.
I mean, they'll put you out offshore, you'll come in.
Yeah, because you got so much water moving.
Yeah.
Sock?
Yep, big factor.
Big factor, the moon phase.
You know, and
What's your favorite moon for big snook?
probably a new moon
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to be fishing during the day, because I know a lot of our fish show up and leave on the new and full moons. You got the strong tide.
Right. That's
So a lot of fish are going to show up, and I know that they weren't eating all night long, and I got good strong tides. Snook like a really fast moving tide.
Adam.
I agree. Full moon, new moon for tarpon is important. I prefer the new because it's not bright all night.
Right.
The bite can be tougher on a full during the day, but 3 days before and after new moon is usually my favorite.
Yeah, that's my favorite too.
The way the tides go affects a lot too, I've noticed. A new moon, the outgoing tide is going to be your better tides.
Mm-hmm.
And on the full moon, your young flood.
It's going to be better.
Something I noticed a long time ago.
Write that one down. Hey Cam, we're gonna need. I don't know where the raffle tickets and stuff are, but we're gonna need that after a little while.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're in 30 more
Do that
minutes.
here?
We're gonna do it up here for this stuff here.
Where are those tickets at?
That's what I need you to go figure out. At what point do you like windy weather? At what point do you feel like windy weather could impact fishing poorly, or is there a good plan B? So as the wind ramps up, at what point do you go, this is not working? What is there a good plan B on windy days? Can you do something else? Brandon?
It depends on the wind direction. If it's blowing southwest at 25 mile an hour, I'm guaranteed I'm going fishing.
Yeah,
If it's blowing,
I've heard you say that before.
If it's blowing 25 mile an hour out of the northwest, you can bet I will be at the house. That south to almost west wind, if it doesn't matter how hard it blows, the fish bite phenomenal. I mean,
See, you were right. West is best. Dallas.
Not
You're like a
northwest.
not northwest.
Not northwest.
Northwest.
Northwest, everyone's at lollygaggers.
If it's still cloudy, we'll be fishing.
I will stay home.
So is it when the wind gets like that and could make fishing difficult? Let's just say it's blowing like extremely hard out of the west and someone doesn't want to battle it. Is there an inside game that they can still play that they might still have some?
There's always fish on the inside here year round.
Yeah.
Control creeks.
Start getting back in those creeks and getting out of them. The little pockets of rock, like the little rock ponds way back in the back, I target those a lot. Way back in Ozella, east of Pex, and all the way to Homosassa, back by Game Creek and all that stuff out in the little Homosassa. You can get back in there, and there's always going to be fish back in there.
Yeah. Good stuff. You guys are giving away some good stuff. All right. Big snook. How do you target them, and what baits and lures? That only big snook. So Sock knows I'm going to ask him this. So if you're only going to target, let's just say snook that are bigger than 35 inches long, what natural baits, and I know you have them all, and I'm sure you'll omit one, and what lures are your go-tos for big snook?
So I'm going to probably have extra large pinfish.
Like hand size
Right,
pinfish.
yeah. CA's hand.
Yeah, big old
size.
hands.
Also mullet, and they don't have to be real big, 6 to 10 inches.
You always tell me hog leg.
Well, over 8 inches is a hog leg.
Okay.
So mullet, pinfish, larger profile bait.
Mhm.
But as far as the artificial side, I use a lot of the like that Hercules minnow, the big one, the real big one.
That's my favorite.
That's been a killer.
Mhm.
The no live bait needed, which Sodium just started carrying.
Yep, those are in there. I saw them on the back wall. I was standing there talking to Casey. I was like, when do you guys get these in? I saw like 4 guys walk in and buy them.
So the problem with those is they rip so easily.
Yeah.
But they sell the mended glue, the big 8-inch on an 1.5 ounce jig head. That way, those big snook live on the bottom.
In that tide.
You want to get that bait down, and that 1.5 ounce, 8-inch, no live bait needed.
Is good.
Yeah. And you'll catch underslot snook on a huge lure.
Oh yeah, I know. I've seen it. That's ones that bite mine all the time. That's why I wait till you post to see if I can post one. JC.
Same thing. Those no live bait needed ones work real well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't use it so much on the jig heads, but as the big like Texas big hooks.
Oh, the big beast style
Big
hooks.
styles,
Yeah.
and then live mullets.
Mullet.
From 5 to 8 inches.
You'd agree, James? Or
I use the for artificial. I like the deep dive, the diving bait busters. I'll just pound them, just keep sending it through them and sending it through them, and eventually they're going to smoke that thing. It's a fast moving bait, you know. And then as far as natural bait, I mean big pinfish, you know. Probably, I don't. Many of these big pinfish. So, but if I'm trying to catch snook, a lot of times I do it artificially. Those bait busters.
Really big mud minnows have been working really well too. Big muds.
yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I always have mud minnows in the boat, and those big mud minnows work. And, if I can add one more, needlefish. Needlefish work great. Hook them right in the butt.
Or socks back here going, I'm going to kill that. I'm gonna kill that.
I use all the things.
What do we got here? We got a hat?
There's a bus trying to stand over here. I think it's probably going to be me who does this, right?
Yeah. You're gonna have to distribute them too. So here's a fly fishing question that I'm going to ask three of you. How important is casting accuracy in regards to fly fishing? Does blind casting ever pay off in this fishery? JC?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Is there a blind fish shot here?
There is, but it's not really enjoyable.
Yeah.
I mean, casting a fly rod senselessly all day it's fun for a minute, but it wears off quick. If you are resorting to banging points, you can be productive blind casting points. If you just hop, 2 or 3 casts on this point, 2 or 3 casts on this point, you just jump point to point on the
Might
outside.
catch some rat reds and things like that.
You'll catch fish, but it's not going to be a lot of fun.
Since I did not ask you on the last one, Sock, what do you think?
I'm a huge blind caster.
Of course you are, because you're fishing at night for those snook.
No, not during the day. All of my biggest snook on fly up to like 33 inches. Throwing them big dragon tails, just stripping them back in. And redfish. If you got a bad fly fishing day, the wind or the clouds, that Dupree spoon fly. And I just go put it where I know the reds are at, and I catch the hell out of them.
You make me smile, kiddo. You do make me smile. All right. Now I know I'm always in the little boat with the big long stick pushing around. But how do you approach an area with your boat to set up to fish? Is being stealthy really that important? So I know some of you guys have bigger boats. It's hard to make them look small. So how important is stealth, or do you go somewhere, wait 15 minutes for the fish to settle, and then start fishing? James.
I mean, 100%. I mean, still, especially with our water, it's clear.
Yeah.
You know, it's shallow. A lot of times I'll use the wind and the tide when I come off plane. Anytime I approach any spot, that's the biggest mistake I see people make. They'll drive their engine right up to it, and the fish is going to say, man, yeah, you might catch the fish, whatever, but you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. So I use the wind and the tide. I'll drift in, and I'll try to look for grass or sand or something to even stick my power pole down. And my power pole, I have it set on the quiet ones where it's not going crazy, where it's taking time going down and, sitting in there. And I think stealth is, important.
Jeremiah, you need to have a beer with him. This is going to keep you from breaking power poles.
Oh, yeah.
Hear that slow
But,
stuff?
that happens, though. You're still going to hit and dang around, but always approach everything with as much stealth as you can.
You got a big boat there, Sock. What do you do? How important is the stealth?
It's very important, and I use my trolling motor, of course, to get in there. But once I get close to the spot, I break out my 22-foot push pole, and I will make sure that I stop the boat. And I'll inch in there with the push pole, and then I bring the boat to a complete stop. and then I put my power pole down. Because if that thing bounces one time on the rock, all those shreds are gone.
Oh yeah.
So I will make sure the boat is stopped with my push pole and then put the pole down.
That's a good tip, Brandon.
Motor's scared, so the reds can do that.
That's always been the truth. Brandon, how do you do it?
Yeah, I try to use them there as quiet as possible. Try to use my trolling motor as little as possible. I did have a few instances last year though, where it was the first time I was sitting on a school of redfish and I didn't have, nothing was going on, and I motored past them and went up the creek, and they all spooked, of course. And when I came back down the creek 30 minutes later, those fish they were roaming, I think, because of my motor more, and it fired them up like instantly. So I try to be quiet, but I've seen instances where the motor doesn't affect
them as much.
If they're
as
sitting there still not doing anything, really tough to get them to bite. I've seen where that works.
Yeah. Which brings me to a question about creeks. Is there or should there be an etiquette fishing these creeks if there's someone else in the creek? So let's just say you come down a bigger creek and there's a creek that goes back in there and you can see someone way down in there. Do you even go down that creek, or is there an etiquette saying, hey, that guy's been in the creek, we're just going to let him have the creek and go to the next creek? Is there an etiquette to that, guys? Dallas, is there?
Well, of course, and etiquette, I think, could be taught a lot around here. But yeah, especially if you have another option, if you have something else, don't go right behind or right in front of somebody. Don't cut anybody off. I kind of think of a football field. If you give someone, and a football field's even small, so give them a couple football fields at least.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always something to go fish out here. You can always go find more fish. There's plenty of water out here, plenty of schools of fish, plenty of areas, plenty of pockets. So yeah, I would say definitely go find something else.
JC, what do you think about the etiquette and with the creek thing? And I'm going to Jeremiah last because I know he's probably going to stand on his chair.
I try to give everybody etiquette on it. Like if I see you pulling down one way or the other, I'm gonna
go the other way,
go somewhere else and do my own thing. I do my best if someone's close to the channel or fishing something that go way of the natural path. I'll either slow down or take it down.
I actually saw him do that one time. I was pulling and he came running in his East Cape, and he's running up, and all of a sudden he saw me, and then he whips around. My guy goes, "What the hell is that guy doing?" I was like, "Oh, I'm in his spot." I'm definitely in his spot. All right, Jay, this is your shot. Tell him what's going on.
I have a lot of people ask me, because obviously I get aggravated. But they'll ask me, they're like, oh, we heard you get aggravated, so we'll see you. And they go, well, how close is too close? You have to ask yourself if you're too close to somebody.
It's way too close.
You're probably too close.
You're probably too close.
And, yesterday I had to turn around 3 times to stop being a jerk because I knew there was a different way to go home. And then there's sometimes you can't.
Yeah.
Like if I know it's the only way.
You got to go.
If it's not too low, like last year with JC in a hole, I come around and I put my boat on rocks and had to get out and push. So it's just one of the things.
You can see me back there.
Where do you want me to go?
I told you to come on in.
All right, here's a personal gear question. What lens color for sunglasses gives you the best opportunity to see and recognize fish before they know you are there, Adam?
For inshore, I like anything with a copper base.
Okay. James?
Same thing.
Copper base?
Inshore.
Yep. Sock?
I like these. These are the Oakley tungsten prism lenses. Best in the game.
Now, for people over 30, what should they be wearing?
Probably the Smiths.
That was a straight up singer right there. I didn't even catch that one in the web. That got me right. Go ahead, Brandon.
I wear a lot of the blues. It really
Because you're offshore a lot.
Yeah, but not just because of that. Even in low light conditions, I like the tungstens, but on the high, bright, sunny days, the blues and the greens work really good for me inshore and offshore. But if it is cloudy, I'm always wearing the Oakley tungsten. Brightens everything up. But I definitely the blues for an all around on a sunny day. It's what I wear.
Okay. I'm brown polarized. I gotta have brown polarized, and I gotta have a prescription. All right, let's do another one here. Water temps start climbing in the heat of the summer. Are there still opportunities to catch speckled trout shallow, or are you guys going out to deeper water? And how deep is that water, JC? Deep.
Yeah. 8-10 foot.
8-10 foot. Brandon?
I go deep. I caught some trout this year at 17 feet.
17 feet. So what lure are you using at that? Jig?
A jig, I'll catch them when I caught them first. I caught them on pinfish, grouper fishing.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of the old timers, and I've tried it some, and I've had some success. But Dan Clymer, for instance, he used to jig straight up and down in 16 to 19 feet of water, like you're jigging for like a walleye or something up north. Almost straight up and down. Just drop your jig straight behind the boat and just jig it with your drip. And they cut Martin Zorn and Tony, and they catch a lot of trout out deep doing that.
That's interesting. James, do you fish any deeper for them?
No, I usually wait for this time of year to fish more, but if I got people that are like, they want to do it, I mean, I'll go to, 8 to 10 feet of water and just jig them,
Is there an opportunity in one of these rivers or one of these zones where you can dock light fish with flies for snook? Does that exist here, Sot?
So I got a green light on mine. I've seen a couple big tarpon and maybe 2 or 3 snook in many years. There's one. No, I don't know of any dock lights around here that fish respond to.
Okay.
I mean, maybe these other Brandon or JC, they might have. No. Not here, Ken.
Not my area.
Not here.
I've seen a couple and it's full, but they don't stick around long. They don't stick around. I've seen
Thomas Sass?
It's super inconsistent. Dock lights were a big part of my deal when I was down in the Tampa, Sarasota area. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Up here, I've checked on the Homosassa River a lot of times, and I've been out a few times and seen 50 or 60 snook on dock lights, and then I've gone out the next weekend and not seen a single one. And the zeros are way higher than the fish actually being there.
Always catfish on the lights.
Yep. I haven't gone out and looked at lights in over a year because
of that.
It's
All right. Here's one more I'm going to throw out there, and then I'm going to take questions from the audience. Because the water is so clear here, what are leader lengths? I'm going to ask each one of you. What's a leader length when we've got this time of year, bluebird skies and stuff like that? Because everyone, and I know there's going to be a lot of depends, but what's your leader weight and length? Lots of times we talk about, well, snook, you got to have 40 pound, but what's the leader length for you?
About that much.
About that
4
much?
feet.
How much that is?
3.5, 4 feet.
30 pounds.
Whatever your bow draw is. What do you think, Ev?
fly, inshore, non-tarpon, 9 to 10 feet.
Yep.
Fluorocarbon from 16 to 30 as far as the bite sections.
For spinning gear?
For spinning gear, about the same, about that long.
Brandon?
I use about yay long, especially for grouper. About 6 feet. Now, if I get to fishing for mangroves or stuff like that offshore, I'll use 10 to 12 feet. That light leader for those mangroves and free-lining for stuff out there. The sheep's head season, I use really long leaders, like 10 to 12 feet.
Yep.
And that will actually, offshore, if you get those grouper and they get you in the rocks, it's going to give you a lot better chance of catching them.
Yeah.
Because you got the leader instead of your braid getting in the rocks, because they will go 5 or 6 feet.
In the rocks, yeah, so you need that leader length. James?
I'm at about 3 foot.
About 3 foot?
Yes, sir.
JC?
I'm about the same, 3.5.
3.5.
Yeah, like Cal says.
Yeah.
You got that long forward.
Jeremiah?
I'm usually about 2.5, 3 feet. I really don't ever use over 20 pounds. And like once it starts cooling down, I'll go to 10, 15.
Yeah. Light stuff.
Unless that's someone's like, hey, I just want to target snook, and I'll get like 30 or 40. I just use real light stuff.
Suck, are you in that same camp?
I tend to use a little longer leaders just because I'm snipping. You know, that leader there started out at like 5 or 6 feet, and that's where it ended up. You know, I use a little longer just because it's going to be getting frayed up throughout the day, and you're going to have to be snipping it a lot.
Yeah. I usually use like 4 feet a leader most days, but I'm using light leader most of the time. I just put a little piece of step up leader on the bottom. So if I'm fishing with what I would call reaction bait, where I'm swimming it hard, you know, just power fishing, I'll shorten the leader up. But if I'm fishing something like a jerk shad, or I'm fishing something that I got to let fall, then I'll have a longer leader. That's how I pretty much do it accordingly. So we're in the last hour, and I want to do these raffles in this last hour before I release you to go downstairs and see who won those raffles there. But I want to get some questions from the class. So we're going to take them orderly. John?
Okay, the Cobia go north in the spring. We get a little bit of a run here. When typically down in Southwest Florida, we'd see a run around October for the Cobia going back south. When do the Cobia show up here?
So what time of year do they come back to the south to winter? What months?
Like now.
Right now would be the
last 3 weeks I've been seeing some. I feel like the bigger fish migrate back south a little bit further offshore than they do in the springtime. We've been seeing a lot of fish, little fish, right now. We'll see a couple big ones come through, but I think they migrate further offshore.
Yep. And that's why you don't notice that migration, because they're going around you basically. Another question right here, this young man right here.
Where do you find Cobia?
Where do you find Cobia? Guys, who wants to answer that one? Wrecks,
big wrecks, big ledges, grass patches, and on the flats, especially in the springtime, always pay attention to those stingrays in that 3 to 5 foot. You'll find some cobias on the backs of those stingrays a lot of times.
Yeah, that's where I find them. That's where I target them most of the time. Is up the stingrays in the spring. It's fun.
Best way to rig a paddle tail or a jerkbait when you're fishing in 2-3 feet of water for redfish, heavy grass. Do you have a rig that's 100% weedless? I haven't found one.
Good old school Texas rig is your best bet, but after that,
even that little eye of the hook sticking out in front.
So I'll give you one that helps a lot. It mitigates it a lot, and that would be there's Z-Man makes a Pro Bullets down there, and the line tie is integrated into the head. So what that does is the lead is not behind the line tie where it creates that little gap, so you don't get that V of grass as much. The line tie is actually part of the head, so it goes in the head, so it sheds grass a little bit easier. I don't know if there's an absolute foolproof way. I can tell you, Texas eyes are fairly good too, but they still will get it. I'll tell you one way that it helps me is when, naturally I'm on a push pole, when I see the grass laid over in a certain direction, it is a lot easier to work the bait with the direction of the grass, and it doesn't foul nearly as much. If you come across it, or you're going against the grass, if it's laying this way and you're reeling this way, you're going to catch a lot more grass. But if it's laying this way and you're going with it, which I am most of the time because I'm in the small boat, it mitigates that a lot. You get rid of a lot of that grass. You don't have to deal with it nearly as much. Next question.
For those of us that are in kayaks that can't make 20-mile runs,
yes,
we're rather limited with the amount of movement. You're talking 2-3 miles.
Mm-hmm.
Any sort of, because like we go somewhere and we don't find fish, we can't just keep running and gunning to find it. Any thoughts?
pick a better spot, or
Yeah. Yeah, come back a week later and we can get a boat.
I don't know. That is a good question. I guess the big difference
Put your
there
kayak on
for
the
me
boat.
would be
Bring beer with you.
if you're staying in a 2-foot zone all the time, or a 1 to 2 foot zone, and you're not finding or you're not swinging for success, maybe you fall back out to 3 or 4 feet and change the depth. Is what I would say would probably be the better play, because you are limited. I would start just fishing different, because we all know the definition of insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. So yeah, that's what I would do. I would change depth for sure. Next question. Got one here in the back.
First of all, this has been very informative.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. I have a boater safety question.
Okay.
Specifically, polling platforms. Any suggestions, tips, techniques that you might recommend?
For the polling platform, I'll tell you what. I have only fallen off one time in 40 years. It didn't hurt. I used to brag about it. I was like, how does a big old guy like me stay on a polling platform and never fall off? Well, this past year I had the Albers from Louisiana in my small boat. They're pretty good sized gentlemen, and they're up on the bow, and I'm pulling in skinny water, and these big basket sponges that you see attached to the bottom here, I'm pulling and I'm looking out for fish. Well, that boat lets me pull pretty thin, so we're in about a foot of water, and that boat rubbed up against one of those basket sponges and kind of rebounded back, and I wasn't ready for it, and I tried to swing my pole, and I took a step, and I kicked my GoPro camera, and I hit the deck and in the water at the same time. My ankle is still twice the size of the other ankle after that. Now, it did not keep me from not still doing that. And I won't get a sissy bar for that boat, because I try to keep that boat as simple, and I like to get that boat into mangrove rock ponds and things like that, so I don't want all that crap on it. But I will tell you, on my bigger boat, which has a higher platform, knowing how hard I hit on the last one, I did go get a sissy bar. I don't recommend a sissy bar that's real high and you've got all these creature comforts. I got one, and I don't put it behind me because it interferes with the way I push pole, or where I keep my rod. I keep it in front of me, and I like it to strike right about thigh level, where you can lean against it if you want to really push. But it's not going to interfere with push poling or anything like that, and it's awesome for climbing up and down fast. So I would say, if you got a safety concern about getting up and down on the polling platform, I would definitely, sissy bar, geezer bar, or whatever you guys want to call it. I'm probably going to get a lot of crap for that, but it is what it is that way.
What are they?
I'll take Mike's and then get back.
Basket sponges? That's what those things are?
Yes.
Okay. I never heard it called that.
Some more advice or detail on in-depth with the spoon thing. Trebles versus singles, swivels. Do you do the little red plastic hat on stuff? Or do you just tie a Johnson Gold minnow on with
So the Johnson Silver minnow doesn't actually roll over. So you don't need a swivel with the silver.
It slaloms.
It back and forth. You're going to get a little bit of twist, but that Johnson Silver minnow, no swivel really needed. It doesn't actually turn over.
Do you do that one over the Sprite?
Absolutely, because the Johnson Silver minnow is weedless, and you could throw that thing up into rocks and mangroves. The Sprite has the little treble with the
Red tab,
which is probably for mackerel or trout, open water.
And silver at all ever?
The silver works. You'll catch trout and snook, but gold spoon, I would go gold over silver for reds.
If you're not throwing that rocking spoon, I would definitely add a swivel, because if you don't add a swivel, you're going to get a lot of line twist.
I had a swivel on all mine.
Yeah, I always add a swivel. And put the swivel right on the spoon. Don't put it up in line. The other adornments, if you will, the red cone, and people add plastic and that just changes the action of the spoon. Most of the time, it makes it plane up in the water column and makes it get higher. And the whole idea behind the spoon is to make it look like a pinfish. So you're wanting to roll that spoon where it's making contact with stuff, whether that's grass or kelp or rock or whatnot. Because the fish that you're trying to get to eat it is generally redfish. And redfish want to feel like they can come up over the top of it and pin it. They want to trap it just like they do pinfish. So you don't want something to pull it up high in the water column. Barry, you had one.
I did on triple tail, running these buoys. I've run buoys halfway to Mexico, and the only one I've ever found was on a floating Home Depot bucket. It's a nice one, but what am I missing on the buoys? What am I? Are they out? Am I out too far?
Yeah, these guys are pretty versed at that style of fishing. I'm sure most of them run trap lines too to find fish, and you can't think 100 or 150 traps are a lot. It's probably a lot more traps that you have to run. But I think the fish, and you guys correct me because you guys know better than I do, I think they get condition of boats running those traps after a while, and there's a lot of fish that are on structure that's like boot, but they're down 2 or 3 feet. And if you're running by them and you're not elevated, you can't even see them. They're 3 feet below that float, and you just don't even know they're there. There's a lot of them floating on grass lines. There's a lot of poles that I'll fish where I don't see them, but I'll throw at the pole and jig 2 or 3 times. I'll just let the jig hit the pole like a buzz and let it fall down the pole. And then I'll put it into gear and boom, I'll get a hit and I'll catch one because he's 5 or 6 feet down the pole. So sometimes you just gotta just fish it instead of run it, but the running it thing is what people do. And there's lots of isolated grass patches where you'll find those triple tail if you run enough. It's kind of a fun day to go do that stuff. Yeah, where you turn a turtle box on and you just go do it. Next question. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
What determines where you put the hook in a bait fish?
What determines that? Is that the way you want to fish it, guys? Tell us.
Current.
Yeah, current.
How I want to swim.
How you want it to swim? Whether you put it in the back or the anal fin or the breast or through the nose, it really depends on current, depth.
Just think of how that hook's going to weigh that fish down too, and that's going to change the geometry of how that fish is swimming. If you put it in the anal fin, that fish is going to be swimming like that. If you hook it in the back, that fish is going to be trying to get away from it and more than likely go down, eventually die, and then flip them. So that, and how much tide.
Yeah.
If you're ripping tide, you need to nose hook or come up, so that way he's not just getting spun around and getting beat up.
And it also depends on what you're doing with them too. Like if you're going to float them on a float, just leave your bail open and go, and do it right towards the head so he doesn't have to swim.
Yep.
Tail hook and you close your bail, it's just going to drown.
Who knew that was going to be so scientific? But it is. It makes sense. Makes perfect sense. Next question. Mike.
If you know the fish are there, you see the fish or it's a favorite haul, they're still not biting. What's the first thing that you change? Color, lure, tactic, cages? What's it?
I'll back off to where I can't see it.
They know you're there, Mike. Put a cap on so they don't see your head. I'm a friend of his. I can take liberties with him. But no, that's exactly what I would have said. I would have said, if you can see them, they can see you. So probably backing off, another half a cast and then trying to work it so that you can get to them. It's probably going to be better.
And then you change, what after that? Change your color, things?
I changed my leader first when I lived down like
Light a leader.
And if you're using shrimp, a lot of times if you got a jig, I just put like a live bait or circle hook on, so when you throw it, it don't make a splash. So like a lure or whatever.
I'm learning stuff. Yeah, I'm learning stuff. Yes, sir.
So, like you accidentally come up on some reds or something around mangroves and they spook, but you just back off, or will they return, or should you just go further away, or?
A lot of times they come back.
They come back. I think they come back 4 out of 5 times. They come back.
They want to be where they're at.
Yeah.
But like they're in the shade or something, you just don't know,
You go by them, you might have to go find something to do for 20 minutes and then double back and know that they're in that line again and then work your way back in there and you can get them.
A lot of times I'll move on to my next spot and I'll hit that spot coming back later that day.
Yeah, that definitely works. Yes, sir.
you say fish slow, I know it's a relative term, but what's slow?
If you think you're going slow,
Go slower.
So what you don't know,
I mean, what's the difference
it's hard to show. So lots of times when you turn the handle on a reel, there's a gear ratio there, and it picks up a certain length of line. On a lot of spinning rods, that's a yard. That's 1 yard every time you turn that handle. So lots of guys think when they're going slow, going like this is slow. But that's 1 yard, 2 yards. So it gets out of the zone pretty quick. So sometimes when you're trying to fish slow, you want to use more rod movement to lift, you get the bait to go like that, look wounded, and then take some slack up, and then it doesn't make so much forward progress.
when I'm fishing for trout, I'll take people, and I'll just have them throw a jerkbait out, and I'll say, don't even reel it. Just pick your rod up, and let the current and everything just do all the work for you. There's actually no reeling really involved in it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of converting from fishing tailwaters for trout and smallmouth.
Right.
So when I'm fly fishing, I mean a strip is maybe your hand.
That's right.
You know, and the way you're presenting it is you're really drifting it in. You're throwing out, you're drifting it in. Here it seems you have to be more specific. You're shooting for his head or in front of his face.
Yep. The cone of awareness.
Yesterday I was using a paddle tail in this particular case, and to your point, I was on this point. There's a bunch of mullet, a bunch of snook, and redfish. 3 redfish came up and almost put their nose on this paddle tail, and then took off and went. And I was just barely moving it. But to your point, was it a color thing? I assume if he saw my leader, that would have scared him off. He wouldn't even come that close.
Maybe it wasn't moving fast enough. There's lots of times when it's
redfish following, move it faster.
move it faster, yeah, speed it up. Make it seem as if it's trying to escape, and then you can make a bad decision. I'm not talking about dating. I'm just talking about catching fish. Next case. Next question. No more questions.
When you're cleaning them, you don't worry about oil or nothing getting on the braid, like messing up with your fishing ratios, catching.
You mean as far
chemicals getting on the braid or whatever you're cleaning it with? You don't worry about none of that, or?
No, I don't. No, I don't, because I'm mostly power. Like, people associate my style of fishing with being really finessey, and the only time it's finessey is when it's cold. If you were to fish with me most of the time, and I'm just out doing YouTube videos and stuff like that, I fish as fast as I can fish. I'm fishing like a bass guy. I mean, Adam's been with me. I'm using an 8.5 gear ratio bait casting reel. I'm swinging as far as I can, and as soon as it hits the water, I got it rolling, and I will roll it as fast as I can get it back, and I'm out there again. And
CA thinks fishing is whoever makes the most cast wins.
Yes. And it works. I mean, sometimes it drives me crazy to watch. I'll watch someone fish, and I like to fish fast. I just like to fish as fast as I can fish, unless it's cold. It's got to be an extreme situation. Then it's like, okay, there's one. You got to do a slick little cast and pull it, lift it, boom. But most of the time, it's just out and in as fast as I can go. With the biggest bait I can throw, I can get away with. I always want to throw the biggest bait because I don't want to catch all the fish, that are like the little tiny ladyfish that come up and raid it. I don't want to deal with it. Yes, sir.
So how do you fish with lockjaw?
With lockjaw.
I've had shrimp out, pinfish out, and throw everything at them out of the tackle box. And they'll just stand there and look at me, just hanging out. And I'm like, what else is there that I can do other than shooting?
I think we've all had those fish that are just locked up and don't want to do anything.
Give them the middle finger.
Go to the next group of fish.
That's where moving around a lot
helps. Yeah.
You're eventually going to get on a school that's going to be fired.
I'm just like, I just don't want to leave fish sometimes too.
Within the first hour of fishing, I know how the bite's going to be. So if I recognize this hook, I'm pounding it. I mean, I'm running around everywhere going crazy. And then eventually you're going to find a fish that drives me nuts. That's going to bite.
You got to ask enough of them, and then one of them's going to say, yeah, sure. Yes, Bear.
You got a motor on this kayak. You ain't stomping with that shit. All the way to the creek. You know, I don't even think about
that
that.
depends, really.
Good for him, bad for me.
Where you are geographically in our system, if you're in a creek mouth or if you're on a flat, lots of times when you have a stronger pull, a flat can be productive either way. But lots of times on the weaker tides, you're way better off in a creek or a creek mouth where you've got a concentrated amount of flow that's going to get a bite going, so it could be good either way. But I don't know. That might be a question that might just be right where you're launching. You got a favorite little zone you like to fish, but I don't know.
I think Jeremiah hit that on the head with that new moon. That outgoing seems to be better, but on that young flood, especially for everything on that full moon, is really good. That incoming tide.
Yeah. Question.
What do you guys do when you sink a treble or one of your clients sinks a treble to their palm or ear or something? Do you use the yank method or do you go to the emergency route?
Fishing line every time.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
First you get a bunch of pictures for Facebook.
It depends on how it's hooked to it. If you can pull it back through, I have a reef permit, so I have to keep a pair of bolt cutters and big pliers on my boat. It comes in a kit. You have to buy it. It's like $120. But if you can pull it through and then snip it and then pull it back through, but if not, I use a fishing. I pulled an X-Wrap 30 hook, big treble hook this big out of my cousin's pinky finger this year. But it works. I mean,
I'm a coward. I've been to the emergency room twice. So.
It really comes out with less pain than it went in. And the more you let it sit there and more it swells, the tougher it is to deal with. So it's better just to do it fast. Trust me, I've had them through me a million times. I'm surprised I don't have a client here that hadn't pulled one out of me, honestly. All right, any more questions?
Yes, bow line. So
okay.
I'm a bass fisherman from Michigan, moved down here 2 months ago.
Okay.
I've tried saltwater fishing down here for a few months, 2020, struggled with it. It was Tampa Bay mostly. Really difficult. Fished a couple times here through Freedom Boat Club, but it really found it to be tough to catch fish. Now, thoughts about selling my bass boat to get a saltwater boat, but I don't want to make that commitment unless I can really figure these fish out. Now, definitely the guide thing is something I'm thinking of doing, but it seems like it's really tough.
You can find a boat that you can, a saltwater boat that you can bass fish in and redfish and trout
What
fish
do you think you would suggest?
An all-around boat, if I had to pick one, and I know people that use them for bass fishing, I've used a young Gulf Shore 20 or something in that 20-foot range. Not too big, not too small. You can still get back in the creeks, but on a nice day, of course you have to pick your days, but you can go out 15, 18 miles. I mean, something in that 20, 21-foot range.
So that's kind of like a bit, that's more like a bay boat.
Yeah, it's a bay boat style.
Yeah, and I would agree with that because I'll go to Lake Okeechobee sometimes, and you'd be surprised how many bay boats are fishing on Lake Okeechobee because they're able to do both.
And then how big of an outboard could you do something like that?
20 foot, you're probably 150. Yeah. 115 to 150.
80 grand.
Carolina skip or something, figure it out, and sell that, and you're gonna get the money back on it.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me, by the way, especially since I got the guides in the room, Captain Cody Pierce from Southwest Florida asked me to ask you guys if there's anyone with a 19 to 24 foot Carolina skip that they know someone would be willing to sell so they could use it as a ferry boat going back and forth to the islands down there. He's got an investor that'll buy it, no questions asked. He just wants to buy it. They just want to buy one. So if you know someone who's got a 19 to 24 foot Carolina skiff that can carry, some payload, because they're going to get building materials and stuff over there, and someone needs to sell one right now, he's got a guy that will buy one.
1% with Brooksville, that's all yesterday.
Yeah, they need to buy one right away. So most of his clients have the fiscal or financial wherewithal to pull that off. So someone needs to sell one, they need one desperately. Are we ready to do the?
You got to close it out. You got to pull focus.
All right. You do realize that most of you guys are going to be on this digital series that we're doing for sodium. So this is going to actually air on the digital sodium series, and then we're going to put it as a YouTube for Flats Class television. So you'll see it once again there. I thank all of you because the real reason, other than you guys coming away with some tangible information that you can take to the water and catch fish and have a better understanding. And you guys have gotten to get to know some of the best guides in the region that donated their time today. And they shared a lot of stuff. I didn't know they'd give this much stuff away because this is their livelihood doing this stuff. So these guys gave away a lot of information. But you guys, just in the room buying the ticket, made us $5,000 toward Hurricane Ian relief. And I guarantee you by the end of the day, we're going to be fourfold that better when we go downstairs and find out later. So I've got some raffle items here. I thank all of you. Give the guides a big round of applause. This is not what they do normally. You know, they're not public speakers and stuff. Brandon has become a much better public speaker because of his show, Local Lines TV. But these guys are the guys that are going to start running classes here, and you're going to see all these personalities doing this stuff. So I encourage you, if you live in the Citrus County, Levy County, Hernando County area, and these guys are going to put on a seminar, to come here to Sodium, because that's what this whole room was built for, was to do these stuff. Because these guys are going to do grouper seminars, Snook seminars, Speckled Trout seminars. So you're going to see that stuff start coming up, because we're going to leverage this room up here a lot more for that kind of stuff moving forward. So I'm going to do a raffle here. Actually, what you guys don't know is Adam is also, Captain Adam, is the Sims rep. So we've got a big Sims bag, dry bag here for some of the boats, you know, that can withstand some salt spray. So we're going to give away that as well. Plus we've got lots of Smith sunglasses here. We may even have a few, saw some other brands in there as well. I've got a Power Pucks we're giving away, a Go Box, some Costas, and my friend Alex Vergara from Alex 900, Rides 900 out of Miami. He tied 100 bucktail jigs and donated this to the effort for Hurricane Ian relief. So we're gonna give that away in the raffle as well. So I think I'm ready to pull some tickets. Everyone got their tickets out? Mix everything up. This is for the jigs from Alex. For the jigs, last three numbers, 374. 374 for the jigs. Right there in the back. Yeah, that'd be great, Alex. Thank you.